myth, the legend from Alberta, Dillon.
Hey, Derek.
Well, hi guys, and thanks for having me.
How you doing today, Derek?
Good night.
Let me just fix your camera there. I'm gonna make sure you're full center. Something happened there, but I think we're good now. You look great.
Well, that's the main thing.
It can't go off without a few hitches here and there, but yeah, you look great, Derek.
Thanks, mate.
Just quick before we get started, Cameron the friend says he didn't miss you.
Yes, well, another class player that needs some mental work.
Absolutely. Alrighty, Derek, I'll start it off with an easy one. Who's Derek Dillon today?
Oh, Lucas, that's a tough one. So complex. Question first up. Derek Dillon today is a retired business guy that retired about 5 years ago and is now pretty well full-time with lawn bowls, whether it be coaching or various committees or boards of clubs or whatever it may be. So my life nowadays is living in Calgary and involved in bowls in one way or another pretty well full time.
That's awesome. So some people might ask you, the accent, it's Australian, I'm assuming. When did you decide and why did you decide to move to Canada?
Well, many years ago, I was backpacking as a young guy, and I met a Canadian girl in Africa, and ultimately we ended up getting married, and I got married in Canada, in Medicine Hat, in fact, back in the late 80s, and ended up going to Australia after getting married for about 16 years, and then decided to bring her home and bring the kids over here to experience the other half of their heritage. Back in 2004, we arrived in Canada, and we've been here ever since.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Derek, I wanted to ask you about, well, I guess a coach to a coach. I know you're a certified performance coach, and that was, I think, happened last year, around the same time that it happened to me, that we both went through that whole process. I was wondering, for our audience and for those that are interested in coaching or don't really have an idea, to you, how important is the NCCP program that you went through, and how instrumental has it been to your coaching development?
Yeah, listen, it's a terrific program, the National Coaching Certification Program, and particularly it gives you different levels, obviously, the club coach, competition coach, and then performance coach levels. They put on a lot of modules that you do at universities or wherever they hold them. And it certainly, as a coach, developing it gives you a range of subjects that you never often think about in bowls. Some of the teachings you certainly, don't relate to bowls that well, but there's always snippets in every module that you do. And one of the keys is that you're meeting other coaches and bouncing things off other coaches, whether it be karate, downhill skiing, archery, hockey, football, you name it. They have coaches there, and it's amazing some of the issues that lots of people in various sports have. We have the same kind of issues in bowls, and the advantage of doing that course is really all the learnings, not just from the structured material of the various modules, and there's about 14, 15, 16 of them that you can do, but the feedback and ideas and thoughts of other coaches and what they deal with on a day-to-day basis. So it really just adds to your repertoire. There's various things that you can call on, and as you go through coaching and you think, geez, I've got this issue with this athlete, what did I learn at the NCCP, that might help on things? And certainly I've been able to draw on that course. So it's certainly well worthwhile.
That's perfect. Greg Wilson just popped in. I know he's one of your athletes. You also play with him. Don't touch the athletes.
Yes, well, there's certainly there's many laws around nowadays, and
Yeah.
I'm more of an old time guy than anything else. And if your skipper wasn't behaving appropriately on the green, particularly during pairs, you used to be able to give him a whack. Where nowadays, nowadays coaches can't touch the athletes, of course.
That's right.
So that's where he's pulling that up from.
What's it like playing with Greg?
Yeah, it's been obviously enjoyable from my point of view, and hopefully from his. Greg come from Ontario out to Alberta, I think, in about 2014, and he was a class player that came out to Alberta and was in the national squad, maybe at that time, or he might have been just out of it at that time, but he certainly had been in the squad at that time. And I was lucky enough to team up with him in the pairs, and we've had some success. And it's a lot of fun. Greg's a type of skip that seeks input from his teammate, and a lot of the time we've been on the same page. And pairs is a thing that sometimes you end up with a guy that you don't even have to say anything. You just have a look and he understands the look, and you're thinking strategy along the same lines a lot of the time without even hardly saying a word. So Greg and I tend to have that relationship. He can be a little more aggressive than what I'm used to, but we balance it out, and it's been okay so far.
Nice.
Awesome. Yeah, it's always nice when you can find a teammate who has similar ideas and can bounce off each other and make things happen.
For sure.
Yeah. So Derek, we haven't spoken to any other coaches on the show, and I usually ask what's everybody's favorite moment from bowling. So since you're the coach, I'm going to ask you this, and you don't have to answer if you don't want to. But who has been your favorite player to coach and your least favorite player to coach?
Well, favourite player to coach, gee whiz. That's a tough one, because I do like coaching some of the younger guys because you see them develop, and it's the same with even some of the more mature athletes, and you see them improve. Certainly one here in Calgary that I've done a chunk of work with is Mike OReilly. He's the president of Calgary Lawn. He didn't start bowls until his early 50s, but he exudes everything that you want an athlete to do. He certainly works hard at the game. He practices. He measures his training. He goes home and puts it on a graph on his computer, and he just eats, sleeps, and drinks bowls, and
Wow.
is always looking for where can I improve? Is in his dialect all the time. So, from that point of view, he's been terrific to work with. Gee whiz, so on the worst player to coach, boy, oh boy, that's got to be tough. That one, I don't know.
It's got to be Rob Law, right?
Well, Rob, there's certainly been a lot of work done on his delivery, I guess, over the years. When I first saw Rob, and I think Darryl's probably done a lot of the work on this anyway, he looked like a robot that was trying to turn inside out. His knees were going all over the place. He's so low to the ground, he was almost like a gopher underneath the ground. And, some of those guys that start off with deliveries just naturally like that are hard to change. There's no doubt about that. And then there's always frustrating players too that have got immense talent, and if they just if they worked at it harder and sort of really stepped up and trained harder and did things to improve their game, that they could be one of the better bowlers around. So there's been some frustrating ones over the years. There's no doubt about that.
Absolutely.
So sticking with the coaching side, I must say that Alberta has, in the time that I've been bowling, really, really improved as far as the players that they have, the systems that they have in there to bring younger players up or developing players up. And I know you've had a huge part in being sort of a guide and a mentor to all these athletes. What do you think has been some of the secrets to the success of Alberta in the last, I'll say, 4 or 5 years that have really made them a strong provincial player?
Well, certainly the improvement is down to the players more than anything. That's for sure. Certainly what they have now is a more structured professional approach, if I could put it that way. I've been able to send out a number of things for them to read and to focus on in regard to bowls. Structured training programs for them to follow. Because training is just not, practice is not playing a game. Practice is doing a structured training program that will help you improve your game so that when you come to play a competitive match, everything that you practice, you'll be able to, put into that game. So a lot of the players have certainly picked up on that. We've certainly had a number of development training sessions that I run at every club in Alberta. It's easier to do than Ontario, obviously. But, a lot of players, young and old, come out to those. We were lucky enough to pick up a couple of juniors from the sport of curling that have come into bowls and have that competitive juices flowing, and the competition that they've played in curling and what have you is probably more fierce than lawn bowls. So they're certainly a lot more relaxed, and we just have constant contact with the juniors out here. We haven't got as many as we'd like, but certainly the ones we have, we're able to keep in contact with. They feel some ownership of the development program. And we also, along with Dave Matthew, him and I put together a Alberta versus British Columbia test match each year. And that's just for development players. So those players that may have been to nationals and what have you, but they're younger players, they're still developing, still things to learn. And this is just another, this is over a weekend we play this. And, it's just more competition for the younger players, which is what most players in Canada need. They need more competition.
Perfect.
Right. Just seeing in the chat a question. I'm going to assume it's for both of you guys. The Australians seem to have a big emphasis on physical fitness. Do you think that is an area that Canada Bowls has to focus on to be at the elite level?
Well, I'll let Derek take this one.
Well, that you just cut out on that one a bit, mate. But certainly what I've seen with the national program in Canada, and I've actually I've done some training with the Australian high performance squad in Australia, where they do run some courses and that down there. And Canada is not that far off in what they do. Compared to Australia. It's just that in Australia, a lot of their players are full-time players. The money is in the game down there that they can play full-time. Certainly what Terry Scott, who's the head coach, has done in Canada has added a lot of professionalism and structure to the program, which is very similar to what certainly the more high-flying, money-wise programs of New Zealand and Australia and England, Scotland, etc., Malaysia do. And it's just not about bowls. We live in Canada. There's snow outside here in Calgary right now, so you can't bowl in Canada anywhere unless you're at the indoor facility in Vancouver. That's just the way it is. We don't have the money in the game where, like in Australia, if you look at Broadbeach where Ryan Bester is, there's probably 5 or 6 world-class bowlers that are employed by the club to work either behind the bar, bowls coordinating, whatever it may be, and gives them time to go and play in top-level competitions. We can't do that here in Canada. It's just the way it is. But certainly with the structure and the wholesome program that Terry Scott has introduced is very similar to Australia, where it's just not about bowls. You've got family, you've got work life to all balance, and you're in three baskets that you've got to balance things. So which is tough to do. But certainly, I think the national program is on the right track. In Canada, we have obviously a combination of players that are in Canada, and we have a combination of players that are based overseas, like Ryan, Kelly Kerran, Leanne Chenery, etc. Joanna Cooper's been in New Zealand a lot the last couple of years with her PhD. So, we do have players that are playing a lot, and we do have players that don't play a lot. They're out working, etc., etc. So, that's always going to be tough when you go to when you're going to Australia to play on fast greens. If the World Championships were going ahead in May, and they're not, but we would have had players coming out of the winter here that probably, a lot of them wouldn't have put a bowl down before going down to those championships since kind of November last year. So it's tough, but it's a good program at the moment, led by a very experienced bowler and international coach in Terry Scott. He's a Kiwi, which is a shame, but and the level of coaching in Canada associated with the program, like Darryl, is certainly, I think, what I've seen since arriving in Canada is that personnel-wise and structure-wise, the program's looking pretty good.
That's great. The only thing I'd add to that for Ralph, who asked the question, is we do have sections for fitness and for mental training. There are items that I think out of all the stuff that we do, those are the two that we struggle with the most. And I'm not saying from a program, but even as athletes, trying to maintain that physical fitness while you're doing what Derek said, maintaining family and work and everything else on top of training for bowls, it's difficult. So there is a focus on it. It does help, as well as the mental training as well. That always helps out.
Just as somebody who's not a coach and from a player standpoint, I think it's definitely helps, but it's not necessary. Like, I've been both ends of the spectrum where I was significantly overweight and out of shape, and I still had mild success in bowls. And when I lost 50 pounds and was in the best shape of my life, I didn't really feel like I was much different of a bowler. But maybe the long hot days in the sun were a little bit easier. So I would say it's definitely helps, but it's not overly necessary to be in absolute pristine shape like an Olympic athlete or something.
Well, it's a different fitness, there's no doubt about that, but it certainly helps your mental game.
Absolutely.
If you're fit, a lot of these guys, certainly in Australia, which are an advantage over a Canadian player, is that they're on the green, all day long, every day. Sometimes. Certainly there was the case before Asia Pacifics in May of last year that, Ryan Bester, for example, had played previous to that tournament, had played something like 25 days in a row.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of that is natural fitness, but he's on his feet, walking up and down the green 25 days in a row. So, his fitness is certainly more match fit rather than go and run 10 kilometres type fit, but it certainly helps towards the mental strength side of his game.
Yeah, I agree. So we have another question here in chat, and it just goes back to the basics for you, Derek. What made you take up coaching in the first place?
I guess I've always enjoyed sport and getting involved in whatever sport it was at the highest level that I can. And that was the same in business. So, certainly when I was younger days playing cricket, I wanted to, playing cricket or tennis, I wanted to play at the highest level. And bowls was no different. I started playing bowls in about 1982, so I was about 22 years old. one of the younger guys around in those days. So I got to a good level that I found, balancing family and my business life, and certainly wanted to get involved into coaching so that I could get to international level. As a player in Australia, I was not going to get to international level. I couldn't afford the time and what have you. And by the time I come to Canada, I was probably too bloody old. So so what retirement has been able to afford me is that I've been able to get into coaching full time, and with the purpose of coaching at grass levels and at elite levels, and it's what's been able to do so far. It's enjoyable as hell, and I tell you, it's almost more pleasurable than winning a national championship in pairs with Greg Wilson, for example, coaching him and others to achieve something or even get close. Like Greg got the silver medal in the national singles last year. Things like those events, even though he finished second, I tell you, brings out more emotion and more of a sense of achievement than doing it as an athlete itself.
Right.
So that's one of the reasons I like to coach, is to see the improvement in people and the advancement of the game of lawn bowls.
It's a great answer.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to have a little fun with you. We've got a few pictures from Facebook and other areas that we've dug up. What I'll do is I'll throw them on my screen so that everybody can see, and we'll kind of talk through them. It'll just take a second for it to come up.
Right, I see it.
So, the first picture we have here is obviously one that you've talked about a couple times. Pairs win in, I believe that was Willowdale.
Yep, 2015.
That's right. What's the significance of this to you?
Well, as far as I didn't win any national titles in Australia
Okay.
up to that point, up to this point, and the likelihood that I will is probably pretty rare. So this was my first national title in Canada. I hadn't played in that many national events in Canada up to this point. I think this was my second or third year, I think, and significance because it was my first, and playing. I think this was only the second year Greg and I played together. So
Wow.
It was that's why that one's significant.
Perfect. How about this one?
Yeah, well, this would have been just last year. This is at Juan de Fuca out on Vancouver Island, and these are the guys with the Alberta development team. Some of them, not all of them, but no, it's not. It's the junior nationals at Juan de Fuca again last year. So. Well, because the juniors are in the development squad, so it threw me for a little bit. But yeah, this is last year's national juniors at Juan de Fuca.
All right, and it looks like there's a medal that you're taking home there.
Yeah, I think that was a bronze, equal bronze for her and for Alexis, and. That puts her into the junior squad nationally, I believe, which is what she really wanted to achieve.
Perfect. Now, I brought this up because not only is it a great picture of you, but I wanted to ask, who is Derek Dillon?
It's amazing how many people over the years, Darryl, have added an I to my surname for some reason. It's unbelievable. This photo is actually from the Calgary lawn. I was being interviewed on Global News because this was first week of September for the National Seniors Championship last year, the year before, and it was freezing. We'd got a cold snap in Calgary. Players were rugged up. We were chipping ice off the plimps before play would start.
Wow.
And it was hovering around 0, 1 and 2 degrees, and it was absolutely freezing. And the National Senior Triples Championship made the news there, and they were interviewing me as an Australian to say how did I like this weather, and I think some of what I said was bleeped out, but I said doesn't matter how long you've been here, you just do not get used to it. But yeah, that's a snapshot from global news.
Perfect. How about this?
Gee whiz, there's a couple of characters right there, old Cara and Robbie Law. So, yeah, this was in Glasgow a couple of years ago at the World Under 25, I think, kind of indoor championship, they called it. It didn't have many countries from the Southern Hemisphere, but yeah, these two won Cara won the junior singles encounter, and I think Robbie was runner-up, I believe, to Owen Kirby, who couldn't attend the event. So I think this was in December of 2018 in Glasgow at the indoor facility there.
Was this your first kind of stint under Bulls Canada doing coaching?
No, I think the North American might have been.
Oh, right.
First, perhaps, because this was in December, and I think the North American Challenge was in October in California, I believe.
That's right. That's perfect.
I think.
I know three of these people. I don't know about that guy standing right next to you, but what do you think about those people?
Yeah, that's a boy. Oh boy, I'm making that shirt look a little large there, aren't I? Sticking the chest. I'm just sticking the chest out there, but yeah. Listen, that's obviously the head coach Terry Scott on the right-hand side. There's Dazzle Fitzgerald, the national youth development coach. Gene Rooney, of course, a very accomplished bowler, and myself with plenty of product in the hair there, I notice. That photo is actually at Mermaid Beach Bowls Club and right. On the Gold Coast, and that was practice for Asia Pacifics last year. Right. One of the training days we had at Mermaid Beach. And that's a good squad. I tell you, I've got to say, we do think similar strategies. We do think similar things about the national program. Terry's brought it all together with structure and professionalism, and I think the results have showed.
And I do have to do a shout out to you here, where between Terry and yourself, I was the best kept coach in Australia. I mean, the meals that were made, everything that was taken care of, I felt like royalty. It was amazing.
Yeah, you were a spoiled brat, Darryl. There's no doubt about that. You know, there was plenty of Super Crisp around for you, and right. the meals were excellent. There's no doubt about that. And Terry and I certainly put together a lamb roast for the whole squad there on our Sunday off, and it was a good trip and some good results.
And finally, the corduroy shorts. What's the story behind that?
Well, everyone needs a brand, and you know, amazingly, the young players in some of the squads nowadays supposedly have never seen corduroy shorts. You know, they think it's something out of the 70s, which it is. I actually wore a pair of corduroy shorts when I was backpacking, and I travelled to Africa for 6 months. I left London November 1st and finished in Johannesburg 6 months later, and I wore the same pair of corduroy shorts the whole way. So the story sort of began from there, and then corduroy started to come out again, and I certainly snafu'd a few pairs, all the same, by the way, because they don't come around very often. But it just shows you in fashion, if you wait long enough, things you like will come back around. So
perfect.
A lot of the young players, like a Wilson and a Law, etc., have not seen corduroy much before. So it's just another aspect of life as a coach that you teach these young players, about things about life, other than just bowls, Darryl, as you would know.
That's right. So we have a question from actually a guy that's local to me, Dave Allen, out in Preston, Cambridge, Ontario. How can Bowls Canada and provincial organizations help develop bowls for people with disabilities? We have some experience with blind bowlers, but I really haven't seen much with wheelchairs and others.
No, we haven't, and we certainly can. And I think Don Caswell and Catherine McGregor are certainly two people I know that are kicking that off. Mm-hmm. Obviously, current climate in the world has kind of stopped a lot of those advancements. And it's certainly something that we can introduce to disability bowls in Canada. We certainly for many years had blind bowlers go overseas and compete at world championships and what have you. And certainly at Calgary Lawn we've had some foray into disability players. So it's certainly another aspect of it's a game that disabled players can play, whether Absolutely. In a wheelchair or whether it may be. There's certainly world championships, there's Commonwealth Games, etc. that you can certainly level that you can get to, and it's just one of those things that lawn bowls is not in Canada. Is not something that if you said lawn bowls to the general person in Canada, they may not know what the hell you're talking about. So it's just a matter of certainly getting that word out. It's an aspect that clubs could certainly promote. There's certainly ways to do it. You're not going to damage the greens with wheels from the wheelchair. There's certainly rubber pads you can put on the end of walking sticks, etc., that clubs overseas, that other jurisdictions overseas have been doing for many, many years.
Perfect. Yeah, I know there's programs being put in place, obviously. The unfortunate situation that we're in right now, there's just none of that being pushed forward, but I know that it's in the books and it's ready to go once we actually get to kick off.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's another avenue of getting players. That's for sure. At your club.
For sure. Do you have any more questions for Derek today, Darryl?
No, I think I've exhausted my list.
Alrighty. Well, I would like to thank you for your time today, Derek. It was a good time. I had a good time talking to you, and we appreciate you. And I hope that you have a good rest of your day.
Well, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me, and keep up the good work. This is a terrific program, and it gives all of us who are sitting at home thinking about bowls rather than being able to do anything about it. Certainly on scanning YouTube, watching games, and Facebook, that's on things that are being reshone there. That this is another aspect of bowls that promotes the game. Gets the sport in the minds of people, and it's guys like you that are the future of the game, and it's great that you're promoting it this way. So thanks for having us.
Perfect. Thank you a lot, Derek.
Thanks, Derek.